Hey everybody, welcome to Mr. Rogers' afternoon clay class. Today, I'm going to show everyone how to prepare some pieces of bisque here for glaze. And the first step in glazing is actually cleaning the pot off. So I have a very clean sponge here and another very clean sponge here. And I want to get all the dust and potential debris off the pot before I start glazing. And this sponge is damp, but not soaking wet. I'll go into the pot and sweep that around. And this also adds a little bit of moisture to the bisque body, which can sometimes help the bisque body take that glaze just a little bit better. So just a tiny bit of moisture though. All right, that is pretty clean. All right, I get this slab box here. Dust this off. After they've been through the bisque kiln, they can be kind of dusty from all the fumes and gas and burn off that happened in the kiln. And glaze does not stick to dust. So if your pot has any kind of dust on it, you'll have blotchy areas of glaze, which is awful. Okay, these look pretty good. Properly dusted off. Now they're ready for wax. Now, because in this studio we dip our pots into glaze, we don't paint the glaze on. We wax the areas of the pots that should have no glaze on them, and of course that's always the bottom of the pot. And if you have a pot that has a lid where two pieces touch like this, you have to apply wax where the two pieces come into contact, because you have to fire this in place, otherwise it might not fit out of the kiln. All right, so I want to protect my surface table from the wax, because the wax is very difficult to remove. So here is room temperature potter's wax, and I have an old brush here. Put a little bit of water on it, just a touch, and just take a little bit of that wax. You don't want this to get on your fingertips, and anything it drips on it's going to stick to and not come off. Just so you want to apply this carefully over the newspaper. Now, I don't want any glaze to stick to the bottom of the pot, because that's where it's going to be touching the kiln. And if there's glaze where it's touching the kiln, then the pot will melt itself to the kiln, which is very bad. Now, not only do I want to wax the bottom, I'm also going to wax about a ½ inch or so up the wall of the pot. The glazes are being fired at 2,200 and around 40 degrees, 2,240. It's pretty hot. And sometimes the glazes can get runny, or gravity can pull them down a little bit. So if you glaze to the bottom edge of the pot, gravity could make your glaze drop a bit, and it'll end up sealing itself to the kiln, because it will run right off the pot. So to prevent that a little bit, I can wax up the side of the pot just a bit. So then the glaze will stop. When I dip this in glaze, rather, it won't get past there. Now, when I dip this in glaze, glaze is very difficult to remove from bisque. I have to put it under the sink and scrub and scrub and scrub. But if glaze sticks to the wax, it's very easy to get off. It just wipes off very easily. That's why we wax it. All right, so this is ready for the glaze. I'll set this down to dry. It takes just a minute to dry. And then I'll wax this guy. So I don't want to pick this up and start waxing this while this is here, because the wax could drip on it. So I'll take this and put it over here. I don't want the wax to get where I don't want it, because I can't get it off once it's on there, unless I bisque fire it again, which takes a lot of time. It sets you back another kiln cycle, which in my studio could be a week. All right, so very, very carefully paint this wax on to the area where the two pieces touch, and up the side a bit, just a touch. If there's any speck of glaze that remains, I have to very carefully wipe it off. Otherwise, the lid will melt itself to the jar, to the bottom of the jar, in the kiln. So that's done. So set that aside. You only need one layer of wax. That's all it takes. And again, you'll be very, very careful with the wax. If it touches your fingers, you need to wash your hands before you touch anything else. Because if it gets on your fingertips and then you start touching other things, you'll start putting wax on anything you touch. Stuff is sticky. And then you'll end up touching the pot with your waxy finger and putting an area on the pot that glaze won't stick. In our case, the wax is acting as what's called a resist. So it's going to resist the glaze sticking. All right, so I'm going to flip this upside down. Now wax the bottom, because this is where it's going to come into contact with the kiln. So again, this wax will prevent the glaze from sticking. I'm going to go up the side of that box just ever so slightly. About 3/8 of an inch or so, ½ inch, just in case my glaze falls. Give that glaze just a little bit of room to run. If you don't wax up the side and you're glazing to the bottom edge of the pot, you're going to have a lot of pots that end up stuck to the kiln shelf, and that's a big cleanup for whoever does that. And that's usually me. All right, so that looks pretty good. So this has been waxed and cleaned, and now I'm ready to dip it in my glaze. So the next step for me will be to choose a glaze from the many choices I have here, and then mix it up, and that'll be in the next video. Thanks for watching.